Shelley, what are you trying to do?
I am trying to help make the schools better. This really all began when I wrote a cranky letter to my councilman, because I was very frustrated that a lot of my friends were leaving to go to other places because the schools are not good.
So typical in Jersey City, a person buys a house, renovate it, and when a woman becomes pregnant, she leaves the city.
5 is the magic number. When the child hits 5 and they're looking at kindergarten, off they go. Personally, I find that unacceptable. So again, that's really how the group starts. Sort of do 2 things: A, reform the schools, help to reform a system that's failing, but B, also really do a lot of parent empowerment, become a clearinghouse for parents who have problems if they're not getting a response from the Board of Ed, more engaged in their child's education.
Well, what specific lists do you have in terms of making the schools better?
I mean, there are a garden variety of problems. I think one of the things is that many of these schools, particularly the high schools, are too big. There's, I think, a problem of leadership on some level. Some schools you'll see are very good because they have excellent principals. Some schools not so good because the leadership isn't as it should be. There are a lot of things coming. We all know that local control is going to come back probably in the next few years. We know that the funding formula is going to change. I mean, there are just sort of a lot of things going on, and so what I had presented to them was, well, what is your vision of the Jersey City schools? What would you like it to be? What are your strategies for dealing with these problems that you have, the fiscal mismanagement, the test scores not doing so good? And basically they told me that they ask themselves that question every day, and I should ask the state.
So we're under state control, but you mentioned fiscal mismanagement. Are you implying the schools are being mismanaged or not?
I'm implying that the fiscal mismanagement is wildly out of control. The KPMG audit that was delivered to the state in January of this year is pretty scathing about the fiscal mismanagement
Could you
of the budget.
explain what it is exactly to the public?
That audit really laid out all the different areas of the school's budgeting, all the different facets of how the money is used throughout the system. Invoices for books, I mean, all of these sorts of things. And what they really found out was that there was no real accountability anywhere. There was no real central place that all of those different things came together to keep track of who was doing what. So you may order 100,000 textbooks for McNair High School, but nobody was actually checking to see there are 100,000 textbooks delivered, even though the money was paid. So it's just very, pretty precarious.
Well, the Jersey Journal ran some articles on janitors making tons of money in overtime. Yeah. Was that in the report too?
Yeah, it was. It was alluded to that there was also, again, you get the sense of reading the audit that there's nobody at the helm of the ship, nobody really watching. So things like overtime just went wildly out of control. Even, from an administrative point of view, that there was, a lot of sort of lavish spending on travel and retreats that maybe wasn't appropriate. They talk about, some of the bloating at the top, this sort of thing.
The state is the ones watching the schools, and they're doing, on my job, a lousy job.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think they're just as much a part of the problem, if not the problem. I mean, what I had suggested to Commissioner Davey in my letter to her was, what is the state going to do about this? Ultimately, this is your responsibility. I've yet to get any real satisfactory answers.
In the last 2 years, our taxes went up close to $11 million. Now, $5 million is $1 on the tax rate. So we went up $10.8 million, which is more than $2 on the tax rate. It's going up because the formula has changed from the state. That's correct.
Well, it's going to change again.
It's going to change again, huh?
Yeah, it is.
And the city is giving out tax abatement. As you know, tax abatements do not pay money to the Board of Ed. And the city personally do not care at all. So what is your statement to the city council besides, this is my philosophy too, but what is your statement?
Well, my statement to them is what I said to them yesterday is I want to know how you're making up for what will be this deficit down the road. And you were there. I never really did get an answer from anybody. But if you are going to abate all of this money that is going to be taken away from the school budget, and you also know that ultimately, because of the new funding formula that's coming in the next year or two, we are going to have to start paying more already knowing all of these things.
One of the things that concerns me personally is that if you look at towns throughout Hudson County, Jersey City pays something like 13% of the budget, Hoboken pays 60%, I think Bayonne something like 40%, Seacrest pays close to 90%. The bottom line is, if there is nothing uniform on what each town pays, so they redo this formula, are they telling you what we're going to pay and how much? I mean, if you said 1/4 of the town is already tax abated?
Of this town, yeah.
It's tax abated, yeah.
No, I mean, it's sort of become a scandal in the sense that the Commissioner of Education and the powers that be in Trenton will not discuss what the negotiations are for the new funding formula. I mean, nobody really knows what it's exactly going to look like, but I think the theory is that they want to make it more equitable across the board, which would basically take away the Abbott and non-Abbott status, and that everybody would get paid. It would almost be paid more on a per pupil basis. I'll know that that we are going to be reevaluated too sometime down the road, which also has significant tax implications, but we don't know what the funding formula holds, except that I think it is fair to say we're going to start paying more. I mean, my overall concern is that, again, there are a lot of special needs families in this district. New Jersey has one of the highest rates of autism in the United States. And again, you know, these families come to the district, they have to fight tooth and nail to get the services that they're legally, you know, allowed to have, of parents, you know, not being treated well, not getting answers, not having their phone calls returned. Some of them have to end up going to court, spending a lot of money that they don't have.
Just to get a response from the city.
Yeah.
I mean, the Board of Ed, I should say.
Yeah.